27 airplanes out
Wow.
of the 33,
Wow.
right there,
Huh.
before they could get help.
Huh.
And there's few, maybe there wasn't 27 there. I think they lost 2 in France.
Uh-huh.
So it might have been 23 or 25 that were knocked down there.
Okay.
But then they lost a couple more in France that crash landed, and 5 got back to the
Wow.
Britain.
So that was just before you flew. That must have, and you heard the story before you were flying. So that
Well,
must have.
eight men who were in my Quonset hut
Mm-hmm.
didn't show up that day.
Oh, wow.
So there was only 4 of us left in the Quonset hut. 8 of them were in amongst those that were knocked down. That's all documented, by the way.
Okay, no, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
documented. It was, and I have a picture of. This is an aside. There was one of the pilots on that crew was a fellow that played football for Notre Dame. His name was Stan Krivik.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a good football player, and he was the pilot. And his co-pilot was a fellow that I knew pretty well, was Leonard Trotta. And when they came back, they were one of the 5 airplanes that got back to the base.
Hmm.
But 2 of the engines were out, and they couldn't maintain altitude and couldn't make the landing. So they crash landed nearby the base. Couple miles away from the base, they crash landed. And can you imagine bringing that airplane in, crash landing it, and Stan Krivik, the pilot, went through the windshield. Those windshields were that thick. Head first, he went through and was ejected out of the airplane. The co-pilot was strapped in, and he was severely injured. But the Stan Krivik went back into the airplane while it was burning, partly burning, and pulled his co-pilot with the seat out of that airplane.
Wow.
And this Len Trotta survived, and Stan Krivik survived. I got pictures of him
Okay.
in there. I have pictures of him. Huh. And he didn't get everybody out of the airplane, but he got another 1 or 2 out, and the others perished in the plane. But that was a bad mission for the group.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Must have. What kind of? Yeah, I mean, you saw, and that's just before you're flying your first mission. So what?
I flew the next day or 2 days later was my first mission.
So with this in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez.
As I said, there was a lot of thinking going on.
I'll bet. Yeah.
We had a very easy mission, the first one.
And so, do you remember the day of your first mission? The date was sometime.
Yeah, I have it all.
Okay. Let me turn this off, and I'll let you get that. Okay, we're back on now. So if you want to hold these things up and describe them.
This is the original log of the missions which I
Let me zoom in on that.
flew as a member of the 445th Bomb Group stationed in Tippenham, England. And it's an original record of the missions by date and location of the bombings.
Mm-hmm. Now, was most of your bombing in Germany, or did you ever have to fly longer missions, or?
They were all in Germany.
Okay.
All in Germany. Sometimes pretty deep. 5 times I flew to Magdeburg.
Okay.
And Magdeburg is just a little bit south and west of Berlin.
Okay.
Not very much.
How long was a mission like that? How many hours was that?
The missions ran from a low of 5 to 6 hours to 10 to 11 hours.
Wow. Wow. Now, on those longer missions, I mean, I assume on the shorter missions you didn't always top off the fuel tanks. You took fuel plus, you know, plus for whatever the mission was.
You had a total load that you could carry in fuel and bombs.
Mm-hmm. So in the longer missions, you could carry fewer bombs, or you had to have more fuel.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you know what kind of bombs you usually carry? I mean, were they 250, 500, 1,000?
500 was the most common one, although one time we had 1,000.
Really? Okay.
And boy, the plane really jumped up when you dropped that.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah.
You know, you're flying along here on a bomb run,
Yeah.
and then that bomb goes out, and the plane goes up
Yeah,
like this.
yeah. So at that point in the war, the bombardier really was a toggler, wasn't it? I mean, I remember reading that in January '43, instead of having the individual bombardiers drop their bombs, they would drop off a lead plane.
Right.
And the lead plane, we've interviewed a guy who was on one of these lead planes, and they would drop smoke with the bombs so that visually the bombers behind them could see and toggle. So they really didn't have to, I mean, it was a little bit, I suppose, demeaning. You watch the other guy and you go, oh, okay, you know, and that was basically your job. So.
Well, it was true of navigation too, by the way.
Okay. Can you tell us about that?
Well, if you were a navigator, you were really kept the log of the flight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had airspeed and direction that you were flying and everything, but you didn't change the course from the lead plane.
Okay.
You had to follow that lead plane and fly in a tight, close formation.
So did that come about the same time that they were the bombardier was bombing off the lead plane? Did that, when you were navigating off the lead plane, did that whole thing develop about the same time that you bombed off the lead plane? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but by the time you got there, they were doing that, though.
Yeah, I flew lead.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I finally got enough training after my first 10 or 15 missions.
Okay.
I flew lead.
Okay.
I even led the division in one day.
Wow.
Now, when you had that responsibility, you had one of the higher echelon pilots would fly in the right seat, and your co-pilot would sit down, take the day off, and you would put a colonel or somebody up there who was in charge of the mission.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Usually a colonel would be in charge of the mission, and then your navigation meant something.
Yeah. Now, is that when you used the Mickey? I mean, I keep hearing.
The Mickey was only good in England.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't any good overseas, over the continent.
Oh, okay. So what did you use there?
Mickey, Dead Reckoning, and Visual.
Okay. Of course, there's a lot of clouds, so I mean, how many missions got aborted because of bad weather?
Well, I didn't abort too many. We only aborted once that I know of.
Okay.
I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Mickey, which was a very primitive radar,
Uh-huh.
it really wasn't quite radar. You had a master station in England emitting a signal.
Uh-huh.
Can you visualize a signal in a round wave going away from that station? And then you had two slave stations.
Uh-huh.
So you had three circles that were being emitted, okay?
Uh-huh.
And those circles would cross.
Okay, and that's where you were.
Yeah.
Okay. In theory.
And in theory.
Did it work that way?
It was good.
Was it?
It
Okay.
was absolutely excellent.
Okay.
And where it served its most usefulness was on returning from a mission.
Okay.
Because if you went out and by the time you returned you had all these clouds,
Right.
and England was noted for having clouds.
Yeah.
I mean, clouds were always there, practically always. Many times I would be the one bringing the plane back to the base at the runway where you never saw the base.
Wow. Huh.
And I had the G system in front of me,
Uh-huh.
and I could bring that airplane right back to the strip,
Wow.
landing it.
So why was it called a Mickey? What was the?
I don't know. I don't know where that came from, but that's all we called it,
Huh.
Mickey.
Huh.
But what it was, as I said, it was a master station, 2 slave stations.
Mm-hmm.
They were all sending these signals out, and they would cross, and that's where this primitive radar came into play, because it showed up on my scope
Uh-huh.
where I was, and I could pinpoint myself
Wow.
coming back over the coast.
Huh. So it was only really good when you were coming home.
Yeah, because that's where the stations
Yeah.
were. They were in England.
Yeah, so you couldn't
And
use it.
they only could admit, what, 40 miles, 50
Okay.
miles, something
Okay.
like that. That's the strength of the signals.
Okay.
Maybe a little more, maybe 75 miles, I forget what. But it wasn't, it never carried me over to the continent.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting.
I'd have it going and I'd have it coming
Okay.
at the time, yeah. And we didn't have that all the time. We didn't have it when I got there.
Uh-huh.
It was put in a little later.
So your first mission you said was September 44.
Yeah.
And they didn't have it at that time.
We may have just been getting it.
Okay.
But I'm saying the earlier crews never had it.
Never had it, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have it.
Now what about the flak map? You were showing us that. That'd be very interesting if I could zoom in on that and tell us about that.
Well, this is a miniature flak map,
Right.
and all those red portions, and I don't know that they'll show up as red, but they
Yeah, they
can show
do.
up as
It's fine. Yeah, it's very good. Yeah.
were concentrations of the German anti-aircraft guns.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we were alerted when flying through these zones that we would be vulnerable to flak defensive,
Mm-hmm.
German flak defenses. And of course, had to be able in some ways sometimes to do a little evasive action.
Mm-hmm.
If it would help, we did that a few times. But usually you had to fly through it.
Yeah.
Now the Air Force later on found out how to jam the anti-aircraft guns by dropping chaff.
Oh yeah.
Are you familiar
Yeah,
with chaff?
it's this aluminum stuff that, yeah.
If you had like a Christmas tinsel,
Mm-hmm.
well, when they would drop that out of the airplane, the lead airplanes
Mhm.
going in would drop that chaff,
Mm-hmm.
it would start to spread out all over the sky,
Mm-hmm.
and it would foul up the guns.
Right, yeah.
So then all they could do is guess at where you were
Right.
up there
Right.
and try to saturate the sky, and it wasn't very accurate.
Yeah. So you're as lead plane occasionally, you guys had to drop this stuff then.
I dropped chaff 2 or 3 missions.
Mm-hmm. And where would that go? Would that go right in the bomb bay, or how did you drop that stuff?
In the waste, the waste gunners
would
pushed it out.
Oh, okay. So it was in bundles and then.
Yeah, it was in bundles,
Uh-huh.
like newspaper bundles.
Yeah. So the waste gunners
They'd
would
cut
push
them
it
open
and
and
push it out.
push
Huh.
them out.
Huh.
I flew maybe 2 or 3 of those missions
Huh.
where I didn't have any bombs,
It was just chaff.
just chaff.
Really?
Yeah.
So sometimes a lead plane, I mean, so you might have several lead planes, and you might have a lead plane that was bombing and navigating, and another one that just
Yeah.
pushed out chaff.
Right.
Huh.
The ones pushing out the chaff would go a few minutes in advance. You know.
Okay.
They were vulnerable themselves.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
by the same token, they were helping the rest of them.
Sure. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. That
So
was-
there'd be lots of that stuff, and they'd be pushing that out for.
Yeah.
And how big were these bundles? I mean.
Yeah, like they were, bigger than, say you took a newspaper.
Right.
And you had bundles that high.
Mm-hmm.
They were at least that high.
Okay.
and they would cut them open,
Yeah.
and then it would get loose and as they
Huh.
let them go
Yeah.
out of the side of the
Huh.
plane. They dropped them out of the waist
Yeah.
side of the plane.
I wonder if those ever get jammed up. I mean, did they ever jam up engines of planes flying behind them, or that must have been a problem?
No, we had it so that that wouldn't happen.
Okay.
I forget just how that worked out, but no, we never had the problem with that.
Okay. It was pretty effective
I think we
then. Huh?
flew a little bit under, I forget now. I don't remember. But no, it was not a problem.
Okay.
However we did it was not a problem.
Okay, so it would make sense to fly a little bit lower than the rest of the stream, though, so that wouldn't, yeah.
Well, there was a little time interference in there, too.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And I think that flak was able to get below the altitude we were flying in
Okay.
at.
Okay. Now, were most of your bomb runs at what, 20, 25,000 feet, 30?
Never 30, never 28. We flew around 22
Okay.
to 24.
Okay. And you were on oxygen all this time then?
Oh, yeah. Cold? Ooh.
Yeah, can you tell us about that? We've heard a lot of stories. It must have been...
Well,
Because the windows are open. You got the side gunners and the windows, I mean, those are open. They're not closed.
it's not a pressurized airplane.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, at 22,000 feet, 23,000 feet, the temperature might be minus 55, minus 60 degrees
Yeah.
Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Cold, cold. You had, I'm still, my nails and my hand were frostbitten a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and they never recovered from it. There's still show evidence of that, even today.
Wow. So did you guys have heated suits? I mean,
Yes,
how effective were those?
very effective, until something got shot out.
Right.
Then it was trouble.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I had heated boots, had a heated jacket, not a helmet though, I had heavy headgear. But, yeah, if you lost your heat, it was pretty bad situation. You might have had to, if it was only one guy, you could cover him, somehow with the others. But if it was the whole plane, you had a problem. You had to come get down out of there, or you're going to freeze to death.
Yeah. But then, of course, you came away from the group, and then you could get shot down.
Right.
So.
I never had that happen to me. We had a lot of damage, but most of it was from flak. Once we had where the flak came up into the belly of the plane, we had already dropped the bombs, and it damaged the hydraulic system.
Mm.
So that was bad. And when we got back to England, which was no problem getting back, we had to take one of these emergency fields
Okay.
where if you don't have any brakes on the plane, you can go for 3-4 miles until the plane loses its speed
Mm-hmm.
and stops. And we did that once, where we were concerned that our hydraulic system was out and the pilot couldn't bring the plane to a stop. So we did that. And then on another occasion, we lost engines to flak. And what we did there is we put into an earlier field. As soon as we could get over, we put into a field, a British or Canadian field. We did that. And they had an amazing system over there, they being the Americans. If there was a plane with engine problems, let's say in one part of the British Isles, and your station was down in another part of the British Isles, they would have a crew with spare engines and all the parts get in a convoy or whatever and drive out to where this plane was and pull an engine right where it was
Huh.
and put a new one in.
Huh.
And they did that for us a couple times.
And then you just fly back to your base
Yeah,
then?
with essentially another new airplane,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And,
How long would it take him to change an engine then?
usually we were there overnight, or 2 nights maybe.
So this happened to you once?
Yeah. We lost two engines one
Okay.
time, yeah.
I was lucky after you dropped the bombs, right?
Oh yeah, we were on our way back.
So 2 engines you could definitely fly a B-24 on.
Yeah, especially if they were on opposite sides.
Yeah.
If they were on the same side, it was pretty tough. Very tough
Yeah.
for the pilot
Yeah.
and the co-pilot.
And did you never trained for that? Did the pilots ever train for that situation?
Yeah, we did some training.
Yeah.
Even did training for, believe it or not, we did training for stall outs.
Huh.
A
Huh.
4-engine plane would take it up like that
Mhm.
until it stalled
Mhm.
and then drop down.
Uh-huh. Oh.
And that's dangerous.
Yeah, I'll bet. Now, did you ever,
If that plane goes into a spin,
you're screwed, yeah.
you're done.
Yeah. Did you ever do training missions in Britain? Did you ever fly?
Oh yeah, yeah. If you look at that log, you'll see a number of interspersed training missions in there. Now I don't think the full crew went up. It was just usually me and the 2 pilots and maybe I don't know who all else, but it was a smaller crew.
Where would you go up then? Would you go to Scotland or where would you go to?
Yeah, they would take us away from the activity area.
Okay.
And we had a lot of times, especially when I first went over, to meet and talk with the crews that were going home.
Oh, yeah, good. Get some